Man to man, combat hand to hand, hands locked, ready for the last stand, elbow drops, kicks fade bang. If I can make you levitate, better settle mate, lights out, knocked out by the heavyweight.
Hi, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Today, lucky again to be with Isaac, the Headsplitter Hardman, fighting out of Australia. How are you, man?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Great, man. Now, Isaac is a combat specialist, having fought MMA, Muay Thai, and now he's focused on boxing at middleweight, where he's ranked WBO number 9, IBF number 8. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's just what I found online.
That's it, baby. That's it.
That's it, man. I should mention fighting out of Nitro Boxing with Blair Studley, previously at Integrated Martial Arts Academy with Adrian Pang when you were doing MMA, man.
Yep.
Some nice names there, some good gyms backing you. How's your training going at the moment?
Man, it's awesome, man. I've been, all through my MMA career, I was at Nitro working as a personal trainer, still am to this day. So those gyms bounce off each other really well back in the day when I was doing my MMA and, my conditioning and boxing and striking with Blair. And now that I've crossed over completely to boxing, I'm there every day, training twice a day. So it's been really good, man. And Adrian Blair, best mates, man. So when we were doing the MMA and crossing over, it was the best of both worlds. So now that I'm fully ingrained in the boxing world, that's where I'm at. And man, it's awesome.
Now, what do you feel like, man? Because you're like a bit of a hybrid, man. You're doing everything. You touched on Muay Thai, MMA, boxing. Do you class yourself as just like a combat athlete, or now you feel like you're really just a boxer?
I would say I'm a boxer now through and through. For sure, the critics or these old boxing heads in the sport, man, it's such a boys' club in this Australian boxing scene. But I don't really care for that. If you don't have an amateur career, you're not meant to do anything or meant to make it to the heights of the sport. But man, my amateur career was I had 3 punch-ons in one night in a tough man competition on Jamie Myers' show. But I would class myself now as a boxer through and through. Just the fact that I got the MMA in the back pocket and the Muay Thai and kickboxing, man, I could just fuck anyone up in the boxing ring. And when it comes down to it, they need that rule set. But it's good to just know, I can get down and, double leg someone and drop them on the head and elbow their skull in if I really need to.
That's it, man. Actually, something just reminded me today of that fight that was on recently, the Billy Dib Jacob one, because in a way it's kind of similar,
man,
right?
Duck under and he lifted. Man, that's perfect MMA duck under, like under the arm, bang, got the back. So,
so
I would have just jumped on, sagged on a guillotine, glove and all.
Exactly. Like I interviewed both those guys and Billy was saying he's not going to be able to use MMA in the boxing ring. And what did he do? He did kind of use it, used his knowledge of leverage and that anyway, but it was a rough fight anyway, eh?
It was really rough. Unfortunate ending, but that's it.
Yeah, true. Man, to jump onto your record before we go on, just again, it's come offline, so I want to check that we're correct. You had MMA, 9 fights, 9 wins, 7 KOs. Amongst that, the best ones I see in there, which are gun fighters, man. Kieran Joblin, round 4 KO. You just pressured him and you controlled the entire fight, man. And he comes from a great gym. At the time, you can see he's now got Carl Weber in his corner. These are top guys. I watched him fight in Singapore before. And Rob Hill also fought here. He's a gun experienced guy, man. He was looking in form that night, man. And you just iced him completely. Like iced him, man. He was doing real good. He was working what he should be working against you, right? But
absolutely
landed straight down the line when he's throwing the kick. Iced him, man. That's one of the worst knockouts you can see, bro.
Out before he hit the ground. It was a good one.
That's it, man.
Good one.
And then the boxing, 12 fights, 12 wins. Is it 6 KOs?
Nah, 10 KOs.
10 KOs. Sorry, man. I was just trying to list 10 KOs. Sick,
10
man.
KOs.
And of those fights, I look at that Emmanuel Carlos one just again to remind me. I could only find highlights online, but that was a sick fight, man. Like he's a gun athletic fighter, right? Very good. And you just like pressured, man. You're being relentless. And then when you smell blood, that finish was awesome, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. E-Man doesn't get the credit he deserves. He was relatively unknown. And he's fought some of the best guys in Australia. Dwight Ritchie sadly passed away. Wade Ryan beat him, who just had an IBO, a world title eliminator against, Dennis Hogan. And man, he was good. He just doesn't get the credit he sort of deserves because I smashed him. But he was good, man. He was on fucking fire that night. He was lighting it up. So but yeah, I got it done. So I'm happy with it.
On that, man, on that discussion of you being like relentless, great finisher, pressure fighter, man, how do you describe your style? Do you describe it that way, or how would you describe yourself in a boxing style?
Man, I've like this has just come recently. But the more I watch it, but I'm sort of morphing myself or style into like the Australian Triple G. That's what I like to think of myself as. Front forward, never taking a backward step. I feel like I've got good power on my record. He presumes I have good power. And just not getting off the gas, constantly coming forward and just smothering people. And people say I block punches with my face and shit, but that's like to the uneducated eye. If I was getting punched clean, I'd be laying on my back unconscious, right? So, I'm blocking traffic through the middle, rolling with punches. So, which is what Triple G does. They say, even I just watched his last fight against Tesmat again, and they're saying Triple G doesn't have good head movement or doesn't move his head much because he's blocking punches that are coming down the middle. So, to the uneducated eye, he doesn't look like much of a mover like Canelo or something, but that's how I feel I sort of am. Like, E-Man, for instance, he was a mad mover. He looks slick as like a Canelo or something. I'm a bit more straight down the middle, relentless pressure, and that's what wins at the end of the day, I reckon anyway. All that wasted movement, wasted energy, that doesn't do it for me.
And what you just mentioned then is that you're still evolving, and that's a key to it as well, right? Like this isn't the final Isaac Headsplitter Hardman, man. This is just the beginning, right? And so you mentioned about evolving your game, and you're also talking about switch hitting in one of your interviews. Yeah. So that's something that's going to come more and more into your game as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the scary thing about me. I'm 26, and I haven't had an amateur career. I'm only 12 fights in, and when I smash this next bloke to pieces, I get a world title shot. So, and I'm getting better. And so is my coach Blair. He's the first to admit he doesn't know everything. He's loves to learn. He invests money into like scientific books that make you a better athlete and stuff like that. He's constantly going down rabbit holes with the best guys in the world and learning. It's just not. You can't reinvent boxing, but you can definitely get better at it and fine tune the process. And that's why me and Blair work so well, because I want to get better. The days of running 15Ks at been and gone and done. They're only running 15Ks back in the day because they didn't have an air runner or, a lactate test or, all this scientific stuff. It's, that old school mentalities, we definitely don't do it. So, man, I am definitely evolving and I'm going to keep getting better. I'm not even in the peak of my athletic career yet. They say boxing, I was sort of dirty on myself. I didn't start this earlier, but man, as physical prime in boxing, they say is like, 29 through to 33. So, now I'm 25 going on 26. So I've got plenty of time. I could step away for 3 years, come back when I'm 29 and still be at top of the game and physically still coming into it. So
that's it, man. Hey, you mentioned about some of the evolution in the game, which I think you see a lot in the MMA and in the boxing as well. What sort of extra things do you do? Like you're talking about the scientific side of things, like relating to, like, I guess your strength and conditioning, recovery and all that. What sort of 1%ers do you do?
Yeah, all that. Like, I feel like boxing, it's a real old school mentality, like, because it's been around for so many years, like, whereas MMA was this new thing that hit the block and it was so hot back in 2009 and stuff like that. And, so their techniques or, their programming is way more advanced, I feel. Even their culture in regards to around cutting weight and stuff like that, they cut weight. Boxers don't have that mentality. They cut weight, man. I was speaking to a few boxers that I've been sparring lately, and they fight at super middleweight, and they're 78 kilos right now. Super middleweight, 76.2. Yeah. So that, like, I feel like it's they don't understand that part of it, whereas MMA do. And that's my background. Is like I come into combat sports as an MMA fighter, MMA athlete. So we always were doing strength and conditioning. We were always cutting weight and doing it properly. So like those little 1%ers too now only, getting into it more is like doing the ice plunges and the heat, the magnesium bars, heaps more massage, investing a bit more time in recovery as well. Because as a kid, like when I was 19, 20, 21, you get away with just smashing yourself, 2 times a week, 6 days a week and feeling fresh on Monday. But, you get a bit older, the training gets a bit more rigorous. So you got to look after yourself a little bit more. So then that's what I'm doing now these days. So just it comes with it. It's like a coming of age. When you're a stupid, dumb kid, you just think you're fucking unbreakable. and you can just keep going. And most of those young kids can. But when you get older, educate a little bit more. What's that saying? Work smarter, not harder. So there you go.
That's it, man. One thing that you didn't really talk about then, which I'm interested in, I've heard you mention it before though, is the eating, because, you know, when I was a young fella, we just starve ourselves and that was it. You just didn't eat and that was the way to get through it. But now there is science around it. Guys like in the MMA, you got Geordie, fight dietitian, fueling heaps of the New Zealand, Australian fighters. How do you get through that, man? How do you program it and do it?
Man, I am with Geordie. Geordie Sullivan is my nutritionist.
I didn't know that, man. I've interviewed him before. He's a good guy.
Yeah, so he's been on with me since the last 4 or 5 fights, boxing. I touched base with him, my fourth boxing fight. No, I'm a big middleweight, you know. Coming over to boxing, I wanted to be a super middleweight, 76.2, because in MMA I fought at lightweight, which is 70, and I thought, fuck, you know, boxing, 76, I'll cut like 3 kilos, it'll be cruisy. And that was a dumb mentality, and my coach said, mate, if you're doing this and going all the way to the top, we need to tick every box we can, and he moved me to middleweight, which is 72 and a half. So yeah, I got Geordie on board, and he's a wizard, man. So, man, I'm a big middleweight. Outside of camps, I get big. And like you said, back in the day, you know, when you were doing it, you would have been starving yourself. And still these people do it, man. For a lot of my MMA career before I knew Geordie, I had a really unhealthy habit with my diet and stuff like that, man, to the point where, like, I can say now, I was bulimic for some fight camps. Like, you know, I had it down to like a real fucking science. I'd go order my pizza, bang, throw it up, go to bed, and, you know, before I got hungry again. So it was really unhealthy, and I can openly talk about that because I don't give a fuck. But it's just maybe some awareness for other athletes coming through, young ones. Educate yourself and get someone that knows what they're doing, because fucking cutting out carbs completely is fucking ridiculous. Running 10Ks in a sauna suit the day of the fight is fucking ridiculous, or the week of the fight is dumb. There's a smarter way to do it. And I only wish I knew that when I was coming through. And probably a few old heads around me as well. You know, cut the carbs out, you know, get on the assault bike for fucking 40 minutes at night. You know, it's dumb as fuck. You know, you see Geordie and all those guys in the UFC fight week, what they're eating for. I just seen Volko's post today with what he's getting fed fight week looks like 5-star friggin' meals. So
yeah, I saw that, man. I saw those posts too. Looks
great.
So
yeah, it looks awesome. So yeah, definitely, man. That's a changing. The sport is definitely changing for sure.
That's it, man. Hey, another part of that, the psychology side of fighting. Obviously, it's difficult. You're up there fighting killers, man. And on one hand, a lot of the champions and people I speak to find their own way to get through things. And a lot of them, like, say, if I train, I do all the work I have to do, I'm fine to get in there and do everything the right way. Then you got the other guys that like to see, you know, a sports psychologist, etc. What are your feelings on that? And, like, where do you sit with it?
Man, I sit like the work must be done. Like every training session you must do, whether you feel like it or not. That's what gets me over the line. I've never had trouble with getting myself in the ring or needing to will myself into the fight. Like, I know people see sports psychs and stuff like that. Anything to help you get yourself in there. But I personally, only my opinion, I don't agree with that. You know, if you need to talk to a doc to get yourself your head right, to get yourself in a fucking ring to punch on with someone, it's maybe not the sport for you. I don't know. That's just my opinion, and wrong or not, I don't know. That's the good thing about opinion. Everyone can have one. But yeah, that's what I feel. Man, you put that fucking ring or cage anywhere in the world, in the jungle, out in the middle of the ocean, I'm getting in it and fighting. That's easy for me. That's the easy part. Real easy. So my mentality around that is fine, really fine.
Now that kind of brings up my next question. So you got a big fight coming up with Michael Zerafa. Zerafa's kind of talks about his work with sports psychology and etc. I kind of feel when I think about you two guys fighting, for me, it's like a fighter, a real fighter versus a boxer. You know what I mean? You come across 100%. Like the fighter that you don't care about these things, and he comes across as a boxer, if you know what I mean. Like, there's a bit of a difference.
Yeah,
you remind me of that.
All the way down to his fucking fight name, Pretty Boy. That little fucking potato needs a real set. He's a pretty boy, you know, he's uncomfortable in a fight. You know, before he was even known, when he was fighting guys like Wade Ryan, you know, when it becomes a fight, Wade Ryan is a awkward, unorthodox fighter, makes fights uncomfortable, and he's whinging like a fucking sieve in that fight, you know, because it's a fight. He needs a particular rule set to get himself through that fight. He's a pretty boy for a reason. Yeah, it's definitely the boxer versus the fighter at heart, but that's the other thing too. These fucking idiots don't think I can box. So I've got a boxing IQ. That's what they're relying on, that I'm a dumb, stupid MMA fighter that just walks up and throws punches. But I'm definitely not. But at the end of the day, I always say this, at the end of the day, it's a fight. Two men in an arena fighting each other tooth and nail, battle of wills, and his will fucking wilt before mine does. So he's a fickle man. He has no backbone, and I'm going to fucking crush him.
Yeah, that goes to what I was listening to you, and you mentioned that you respect him because he's had a lot of fights, right? Anyone that gets in the arena deserves respect, right? So 33 fights, 29 wins, he's a gun.
Yep.
But you said he's a coward, and you also said that fatigue makes a coward of men. So that's where you're going with it, right? That's your kind of game plan, is to drown him, like you mentioned, right? To take him to that point where he's not going to want to keep going.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's one of my sayings, fatigue. I learned that off Adrian Pang. Fatigue in wrestling when we're wrestling 5-minute rounds back to back. Fatigue makes a coward of every man. And my walk-up style will make him tired, and he'll find a way out. So what was the question again? Where were we going with that?
No, I was just saying, yeah, was that your plan, is to, you know, take him to deep waters and drown him, which you said, yeah.
And another thing was like the fight's just moved to 12 rounds because it's a world title eliminator. He'd be thinking, because he's gone 12 rounds with Kell Brook, who's a fucking welterweight. He was an old welterweight at the time. He's Kell Brook. He's mad, but he's an old welterweight. He'll think that's better for him. That is honestly better for me, because it just means I got more time to catch up to that little flea bag, because he's got to be on his pushy all fucking night running away from me.
Yeah, it seems that way. Man. Hey, you just mentioned about the wrestling. I'm interested in what differences do you feel in the game, man? Like with getting in and fighting MMA versus getting in and fighting boxing. What does it feel like the main differences for you when you're actually in there competing?
Man, boxing is, I don't want to sound like an arrogant wanker, but like so much more easier for me, because it was no secret my style in MMA was like stand up heavy, boxing heavy. I threw one head kick in my second pro fight, and I slipped over, terrified of being on the ground and on my back, and because I didn't want to get dragged into that. Like that was always in the back of my head going into MMA fights. Oh shit, if I get taken down, I'm going to get stuck on the bottom and lose the decision. And I didn't like that. So you never let your punches go full flight, because you didn't want someone to dive under on a double. So whereas boxing, it's just these and like head movement, and so it's so much easier for me, because that's the one thing I was the best at in MMA. So coming over, yes, it's a little bit more intricate, and the movements are a little bit more detailed in boxing when you really dive into it. But we're ticking those boxes as well. But boxing is so much more. I feel like I'm a better boxer than I am MMA athlete, because there's more ways to lose in an MMA fight than boxing. In boxing, you're just going to get your head punched in. Whereas in MMA, like, I could be a gun stand-up fighter, but I could come up against a fucking Kazakhstani or something, and he just put me on my back and hump me for 5 rounds, and then I'm done, you know, which I'm never going to beat those guys. So, so much easier for me being a boxer. That's what I'm good at, and that's, if I give myself a special ability, it'd be striking for sure.
That's it, man. Hey, you said a few times about like it's kind of like never say never for going back to MMA, right? Like you're focused on boxing, but there is a chance. Do you feel at all like you might be missing that little bit of a chance for developing that ground game, the wrestling? Because it does take time, just like everything else, right? And you're focused on boxing 100%. Do you feel like that's something you could miss out on a little bit?
No, I don't think so, because like, man, I'm young. I've got a blue belt, and I always loved wrestling. It was one of my strengths. In the gym, I loved wrestling in the gym, loved to scramble and stuff like that. But man, if I ever do need to scratch that itch, I'll just dive into some heavy grappling training for 6 months, get everything. It's sort of almost like riding a bike. You got the fundamentals squared away. You just got to brush up on, like boxing. If I step away from boxing or sparring for 6 months, I'd come back and sort of piece up most average people, you know, until I get my eye in, get my time, and just like wrestling and grappling, like the fundamentals are there. I would just have to super fine tune them, especially this day and age with all the grappling that goes on. You know, go over new techniques. Leg locks are a big thing these days. So yeah, you just square that away, and I feel like I could go and mix it with the best UFC guys in the world to this day as well. So for sure.
Awesome.
And
man.
especially like boxing, striking, I feel like is the trump card in MMA. Like Israel Adesanya, for instance, he's a gun striker, really good wrestling defense, and he's murking everyone. So, you know, that's like the trump card. If you can punch on really good and got really good distance control, you probably see most double legs coming. You can sprawl on them, keep the distance, and then you just have to have a good base, I reckon. Pang always told me a really good blue belt will take you around the world.
That's it, man. And it ebbs and flows, right? Like in the UFC, you've got in the past, there's been wrestling dominating. Now you've got quite a few strikers in the upper echelon. It kind of ebbs and flows. But I think the key is that you have to be, you know, thirsty to learn, because you can't just stick with your game, right? You got to add those extra elements in now. It can't be one dimensional.
Like that Chimaev, I think he's like a blue belt or something. He was telling everyone at a press conference, when I smash you, I'm a black belt. You know, I'll take your black belt. He's a blue belt. He just knows how to wrestle like a motherfucker. So you don't need to have a black belt to be the best in the world. No way.
That's true. That's true. Now, man, I don't want to go too much over your background. You've got plenty of interviews you've done already if people want to learn more about your background, but just to touch on it, born in Redcliffe, moved around Deception Bay, Caboolture. You kind of associate yourself with Caboolture the most, right?
Yep. The best of the best.
Start off with rugby, then it was kind of in your blood though. You know, I think there's a lot of unsaid like truths about things that you take on from your parents, man. And your father, your late father, was a super middleweight boxer, fought for Queensland title, right? I think it flows through the blood, and whether you want people to acknowledge it or not, I think that it comes from him a bit, you know, because I got kids, man. I see things coming out of them that you don't teach them, man. It just comes somehow through your DNA, you know? Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely. So, man, you've done your research. That's good.
Man, you got a lot of interviews to listen to. It's good to see that you've got that motivation too, like you said, trying to like connect with your father in a way, like to, you know, at least understand what he did and everything. It's quite a nice thing, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And like I've said, there's heaps of interviews out there, but that was the reason why I stepped into that combat sort of realm. Because like all the interviews I said, I feel like I missed out on that really super close relationship with my dad because I was a mummy's boy and stuff like that. So I thought I wanted to break away from what my brothers had with my old man and get something, you know, that was just us. And even though he's not here anymore, but that was through combat sports. So yeah, man.
Yeah, man, it's good. It's good something to drive you as well, right? It's something to drive you that, you know, it's been done by your father before and you're there doing it now. It's got to give you a bit of a purpose too, eh?
Absolutely.
And man, like I said, I feel like you remind me of some of the old school fighters, man. Like you're a real fighter. It's not just about, you know, like you've said before, Instagram model and all this sort of stuff that boxing's kind of turned into and fighting's turned into. You're the type of guy that wants to fight, you know, likes the fight game, fits into it well, you know. Like the old school sort of style of boxer fighter, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. That's like one thing that's hit home this camp with that fucking Space Cadet Zerafa, man. He needs a preparation. He needs the cameras. He needs a suit. Man, his best thing is the press conference because he gets to dress up like a fuckwit. Man, I could wake up 5:30 on a Tuesday morning, be halfway to work, and it could be fucking on. I don't need it. At the drop of a hat, we could be on. So that's the difference between me and a lot of people, I reckon, or the true fighters. You know, they can just at the drop of a hat be punching on that, and they got to will themselves in or do a breathing exercise or anything like that. It's just fucking it's ingrained in us, and we like to fight. I like to fight, and that's what it is. I'm good at it, so and I know it can provide a good life for myself, my beautiful fiance, and give that ripple effect down to my coach, my mom, my brothers, you know, his kids, my kids, all that sort of shit, man. So I'm good at it. So I know I can get a lot out of it.
That's it. And man, one thing you said, which I don't know if 100% agree, man. You mentioned that Australian people don't really like boxing. And, you know, I think maybe they just need like people that they can identify with, man. Like when I look back, like I've read some books. I'm by far from an expert, but a long time ago I read some books, and you got like these old stadium fights they used to have in Sydney, and old Sydney Stadium with like 20,000 people going. With remember there was Tommy Burns, Jack Johnson fought, and then when I was growing up, Jeff Fennick was the number one sportsman in that everyone knew in Australia. No one like he was the number one. He was the guy, you know. And so I think there's still an opportunity for it, but I think people need that hero. They need someone they can identify. You could be the guy, man. You know, you could be that guy.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, and like, when I say that, I just feel like it gets a backseat to like the footy, the NRL or the AFL, which is fair. You know, when you're sitting here watching the TV with dinner with your kids, you don't want someone fucking claret everywhere and stuff like that. That's hard viewing for a 6 o'clock news sports segment, I guess. So that's what I get annoyed about. We don't get the recognition on that mainstream platform, but man, as a country, Aussies, we love, you know, and naturally as humans, if you're at a shopping centre, a fight breaks out 2 meters away from, everyone's going to stop and fuck. Whoa, look at that. It's ingrained in us as humans to watch that conflict. So I think everyone is attracted to it. Maybe it just doesn't get the recognition or the platform I feel like it deserves as athletes, paid athletes. That we're doing more harder shit than that fucking footy player passing a footy to his mate. I just feel like that. So that's my opinion.
Oh, man, one of the hardest jobs in the world.
I feel like as a country, we love fighting and boxing. Yeah, we can appreciate what these people go through and put themselves through for entertainment for these people.
True, man. And you look at, like, I think, like I said, people are waiting for a hero, man. Like you got Volk starting to rise in popularity, man. You know, Tim Zhu, you can see the people are starting to raise as these guys are raising, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm fine with that because at the end of the day, I don't need everyone to like me, and they're not the one paying my bills. But like, man, a hero, I think an Australian hero will be out of boxing would be Harry Garside. Man, the whole country's going to fall in love with that guy. He's so well spoken. Man, I think he'll be an Australian hero for sure. I don't think I will be. Maybe when I've got a world title, people will recognise and respect it. But, man, I don't need to have friends or people recognising that, or, you know, I tuck myself in at night. I don't need everyone else tucking me in. So I'm fine with that. But, yeah, for sure, man. There is people to gravitate towards.
Have a look back at Fennick, bro. He was saying, I love yous all. He was from a rough area in Marrickville and that, man. He wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but he was super well liked and famous, man.
Yeah,
so it's an opportunity, yeah. Hey, man, you mentioned about being a tough game. Just interested in the side. I heard you mention, and it's pretty obvious, MMA, there's different ranges. There's wrestling, there's kick range, there's punch range. So a little bit less head contact. In boxing, obviously, you guys train, you said sparring twice a week, right? So that's pretty heavy on the head. How do you feel about that? And, you know, what are you doing to like avoid CTE and that sort of thing?
Yeah, CTE doesn't cross my mind, and I don't want it to until later in life. But it's definitely a conversation in gyms and stuff like that. But I've had this question thrown at me before, that the head trauma in boxing is so much more, even sparring, getting ready for like a fight camp. But the rest of the body, apart from the head trauma, which if you can just move your head a little bit more than normal, you'll feel a bit better. I know the days when I spar and I haven't moved my head as much because I have a little bit of a thumper at the end of the day. But like the body-wise, like I feel heaps fresher after a week of training boxing opposed to like back in my MMA days. Like heaps of smash sessions in MMA, you're getting double leg put on your back, your Kimura, ears are busted up, they're collied. I feel like my body is like feels better after a week in the boxing gym. Head trauma is much more because the pace is so much more. There's so much more volume. Like, you know, you could find yourself for 3 rounds up against the wall wrestling someone. So, but then I feel like there's less injuries in boxing training getting ready for a fight. You know, busted ribs and busted noses and cuts and stuff like that will get you out of a fight. But man, how many times do you see an MMA fight fall over because they fucking tore their LCL or ACL, or they fucking stubbed a finger, or it's dislocated or something like that. So, yeah, it's definitely more head trauma in boxing. But the body does definitely feel better at the end of a boxing training week for sure.
For sure. Every grappler, long-term grappler I know has some sort of neck or back problem too, right?
The neck, kink necks and shit like that. And they fucking see them with the tape, every fucking joint.
Exactly.
Shit like that. going through $300 a week in strap and tape, man. Not
Exactly.
boxing, man, but
Yeah.
busted noses and flat faces, but that's all right, man.
Yeah, man. So most of your fights have been on the domestic scene. You mentioned that you fought in Xi'an, China before. Are you looking forward to, this is a big part of being a high level fighter, is getting to travel around, fight in different parts of the world. Are you looking forward to that, man?
Yeah, for sure, man. First trip was Xi'an, China. I fought in Thailand, Muay Thai. I've been to New Zealand, and Damian Brown in the UFC. Wasn't a part of it, but like all around Australia, I've gotten to fight, like Melbourne, traveling. But as a fighter, if you're the one participating in the fight, it doesn't, like, for me, it doesn't hit home that you're jet setting around in like this lavish lifestyle. People may think it is. It's definitely not, because it's fucking annoying getting on a flight and not being able to eat the food they bring out and stuff like that because you're cutting weight. More so, what I'm looking forward to more is doing training camps over in the States and stuff like that with my coach. Because training camps, you can still enjoy a bit of food, you can have your water and stuff like that, and you get to train and bounce ideas off other coaches and other high-level training partners. Definitely there'll become a time where I'll be traveling to New York and fighting at the MSG, which is going to be awesome as well. Doesn't really matter to me where I fight or what, it's just got to be a part of the process. But yeah, man, it's exciting to be able to do something that I love so much and see the world all at the same time. That's something that's really cool because, if you love teaching, you don't get to go travel the world as a teacher. You might be able to, but you're going down to the private school, checking in at your fucking 5A class and, teaching the kids math, whereas I box, I get to, jet set around the world and spar and train and fight all around the world. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, like you said before, fuck the teachers. They told you weren't going to be anything, and you'll be traveling around while they're sitting in their classroom, right?
They're on $60,000 a year with benefits. I'm doing that in one fucking fight, half a fight.
That's it. Hey, man, and onto the future. Obviously, you're shooting for a boxing world title, which is on the cards should you take the win over Michael Zerafa. You mentioned names such as Jamal Charlo, Ryota Murata, Golovkin, Alvarez. Tell us about that path.
And the path is, in 2 weeks, I smashed Michael Zerafa to pieces. No doubt about it. And then that's a world title eliminator for the IBF. This weekend, Triple G, Gennady Golovkin fights Ryota Murata to unify some middleweight titles, the IBO, the WBA, and the IBF as well. So whoever gets up, I've got to be in line to fight those guys. When I smashed Zerafa to pieces, I had to fight a Brazilian guy named Esquivo Falco. He's a Brazilian southpaw. I don't rate him that much. I'll smash him to pieces too. So for me, Triple G needs to win, because when he does, he'll go up and fight Canelo for a massive payday, and he'll be stripped of his IBF world title. So me and the Brazilian will just fight for a vacant world title, which is absolutely life-changing and crazy as in 13 fights. But that's my reality right now. If he doesn't win, I just have to fight the Brazilian to become a mandatory. But I'm right there 2 fights away from changing my life. And then after I do that, I've got a piece of the gold, and I get to, dictate terms and say, I want to fight this guy or that fight. People will want to fight me then because I've got a world title. So, and then it's the ball's in my court then. And I do that for the next 6 years, 5 years, and then I retire by the time I'm 32. If I want to have a big fight, come back to the UFC. Imagine that, a world champion boxer. Imagine, say, Canelo Alvarez, not that I'm no Canelo Alvarez, but imagine if he was he said, I'm coming to the UFC, and he had a background in wrestling and jiu-jitsu, or he was 9-0 in MMA. That would be fucking massive and never, ever been done before. So right there, that's legacy and history making. So, that would be really cool. So you never know. That could be on the cards.
That's it, man. Anyway, man, that's all the questions I had today, man. It's good to know that the kid from Caboolture, they said you wouldn't make it. You're on your doorstep to a world title, man. Looking forward to seeing your success, and thank you for your time, man.
Man, I really appreciate that. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.